The Pencil Police. I was in Mrs. Johnson's class, a fifth grader at Oakdale Elementary, when she made the most peculiar request: label your stuff. We were all confused. What did she mean? Our desks were already labeled with our names, and we had no idea why this was necessary. But then I saw it happen to Emma, who carefully wrote her name on a pencil with a marker. Mrs. Johnson walked around the room, inspecting each desk. She stopped at Emma's and picked up the pencil. "This is good work, Emma," she said, "but remember, you need to label all your belongings." Emma nodded, looking relieved that she had done it correctly. I watched as Mrs. Johnson moved on to the next student, a boy named Max. He was struggling to write his name on a pen with a piece of chalk. His handwriting was messy and hard to read. Mrs. Johnson gently took the pen from him and showed him how to hold it properly. "Let's try that again," she said. As I sat at my desk, I couldn't help but think about why we needed to label our stuff. It seemed like a lot of work for something so simple. But Mrs. Johnson was insistent. She had made it clear that this was an important part of being responsible and taking care of our belongings. The bell rang, signaling the end of class. We packed up our things and headed out to recess. I saw Emma and Max playing together on the swings. They were laughing and having a good time. I felt a sense of relief that we had gotten through the day without any major incidents. As I walked home from school, I thought about Mrs. Johnson's request again. It was starting to make more sense to me now. Maybe labeling our stuff wasn't just about being responsible, maybe it was also about showing respect for others and their property. I didn't know if I fully understood the reasoning behind it yet, but I was willing to give it a try. When I got home, I sat down at my desk and started going through my backpack. I pulled out all my pencils, pens, and markers and began labeling them one by one. It took me a while, but eventually I had everything labeled and organized. I felt a sense of pride and accomplishment as I looked around at my neatly labeled belongings. As the days went by, I noticed that everyone in the class was getting into the habit of labeling their stuff. We were all becoming more responsible and taking better care of our belongings. It was amazing to see how something so simple could have such a big impact on our behavior. One day, Mrs. Johnson announced that we would be having a pencil police competition. The student who labeled the most items correctly would win a prize. We were all excited and motivated to do our best. I spent hours labeling my pencils, pens, and markers, making sure everything was perfect. The day of the competition arrived, and we all gathered in the classroom. Mrs. Johnson handed out a list of items for us to label, and we got to work. I was determined to win, but as I looked around at my classmates, I realized that we were all in this together. We were all working towards the same goal: to become more responsible and take better care of our belongings. In the end, it didn't matter who won or lost. What mattered was that we had all learned something important about responsibility and respect for others. And as I looked around at my neatly labeled belongings, I knew that I would always remember this lesson.